The city of Zephora shimmered under twin suns, its towers reaching high into the sky and floating platforms drifting between them like giant silver leaves. The streets below were alive with beings of every imaginable form, some with glowing skin, others with translucent wings, all moving with purpose. It was a city of beauty, wealth, and power, a place where the decisions of a few could shape the fate of many. And in its grandest palace, the most important decision of the year was about to unfold. Princess Lyra stood at the balcony of her chambers, overlooking the city. She was tall and elegant, with eyes that seemed to pierce the soul of anyone who looked at her. Her hair shimmered with natural light, a symbol of her royal blood. Yet, as beautiful and powerful as she appeared, her heart was heavy. A marriage had been arranged for her, not for love, but for politics. Earth, the distant planet from which the human ambassador had come, had been seeking allies. Zephora, proud and independent, could gain much from this alliance, and so it was decided. Lyra's betrothed, a human named Kiran, would join her in marriage. Lyra had met Kiran only once before the arrangements were finalized. He had seemed ordinary, small in stature, with soft features and brown hair that fell lazily over his forehead. He smiled politely, bowed, and spoke in careful, precise words. He seemed humble, simple, almost timid. For a princess accustomed to power and danger, he seemed harmless. Lyra frowned. "Can such a man truly be my equal?" she asked her advisor, a towering four-armed Xiphorian named Thalix, whose skin shimmered with pale blue light. Thalix shook his head slowly. "Princess, humans are clever in ways we do not always see. His strength may not be obvious, but it exists. You must not underestimate him." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I do not need cleverness. I need a partner who can understand the weight of a crown." Thalix did not respond. He knew arguing would do no good. The day of the wedding arrived, and the palace was alive with activity. Servants moved quickly, carrying trays of glowing fruits and delicate fabrics. Holographic banners floated in the air, showing images of Lyra and Kiran in ceremonial attire. The air buzzed with excitement, gossip, and curiosity. Kiran entered, the palace in simple human clothing, a formal suit that seemed plain compared to the Zephorian splendor. He moved with a quiet confidence, his hands at his sides, his eyes observing everything. Lyra watched him from the balcony as he walked toward the central hall. She expected nervousness, perhaps even fear. What she did not expect was calm. He looked ordinary, but there was something in the way he moved, careful, deliberate, almost like he belonged here, even if his skin and shape were different. Lyra felt a flicker of annoyance. Could someone so simple really survive in her world? The ceremony was long and filled with alien traditions. Kiran followed every step with precise attention, bowing at the right moments, speaking the correct words, and even handling the ceremonial glyphs with ease. Lyra could not deny that he was observant, but that did not change her opinion. He was still just a simple man. After the ceremony, they walked through the palace gardens. Glowing flowers swayed in the artificial breeze, their petals shining in, colors humans could not see. Lyra's advisors had left them alone, giving her a moment with her new husband. "You will find this palace overwhelming," Kiran said, his voice calm, gentle. "But I will learn. I want to understand your world." Lyra looked at him, her eyes sharp. "You will learn. But will you survive it?" He smiled faintly. "I am human. We survive." Lyra laughed softly. "Survive? That is different from thriving, Kiran. Can you thrive in this chaos?" Kiran's gaze did not waver. "I will try. For you and for the Alliance." She studied him, expecting hesitation, fear, or doubt. There was none, only quiet resolve. It annoyed her, but also intrigued her. Perhaps there was more to him than met the eye. The days that followed were filled with introductions, feasts, and lessons about Zephorian culture. Kiran seemed eager to learn, asking questions about their laws, their rituals, and even their martial traditions. He practiced walking in the palace gardens, learning how to move gracefully on uneven platforms. He asked about the city's defenses, not as a scholar but as someone trying to understand strategy. Lyra observed him from a distance. He was meticulous, careful, and yet ordinary. She could not see the spark that might make him extraordinary. One evening, while the palace floated under the light of the twin moons, Lyra and Kieran sat in a private chamber overlooking a shimmering lake. The air was calm, the water reflecting the alien lights above. "You seem too calm," Lyra said. "Do you not feel fear, excitement, even anger?" Kieran looked at her, his brown eyes steady. "Fear is natural, Princess. But it does not control me. I have learned to act despite it. Anger is wasted energy if it clouds judgment. And excitement, well, excitement is useful but only when guided by purpose." Lyra blinked. She had never heard a human speak with such clarity. Most would have been overwhelmed, confused, or lost. Kieran spoke with precision, thoughtfulness, and control. He was ordinary, yet his words carried weight. "Perhaps you are not as simple as you appear," she said softly, almost to herself. Kieran smiled faintly. Appearances are often deceiving. The next day, a minor incident shook the palace. A group of rogue mercenaries tried to infiltrate the city, attempting to capture political figures and create chaos. The palace guards fought bravely, but the mercenaries were skilled and relentless. Lyra watched from the palace walls as the battle unfolded. Kieran stood beside her, calm and composed. He did not panic. He did not act recklessly. He simply observed, noting the positions of the attackers, the weaknesses in their movements, and the best ways to protect the palace. Lyra could not hide her frustration. "You are doing nothing," she exclaimed. Kieran looked at her, unshaken. "Sometimes doing. Nothing is the best choice until the moment is right." The mercenaries were eventually driven off by the palace guards, but Lyra noticed something. Kieran had predicted their moves almost perfectly, warning a few guards subtly, guiding them without anyone noticing. He had saved lives quietly, without drawing attention to himself. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She walked through the palace gardens alone, thinking. Kieran was simple, yes, ordinary in appearance, but his mind was sharp, precise, and disciplined. He had moved with calmness that most warriors, even Xiphorians, could not match. She found him by the lake, sitting quietly, watching the moons reflect on the water. "You are not what I expected," she said. Kieran turned, his expression gentle. "And what did you expect, Princess? Someone ordinary, weak, easily frightened." He shook his head. "I am human. That is not weakness. It is adaptation. We survive, and we protect. When the time comes, we act." Lyra stared at him, a mixture of frustration and admiration rising inside her. This simple human, this quiet man she had thought naive, was different. More than different. Dangerous, in a way she could not yet understand. For the first time she wondered if perhaps she had underestimated him. And in the silence of the alien night with the twin moons shining down, she realized something else. Perhaps she would need this human far more than she had ever imagined. The alliance, the marriage, the politics, they were all part of the surface. Beneath it, something deeper stirred, a power that even she, the proud princess of Zephora, could not yet see. The palace of Xiphora had settled into its usual rhythm after the minor mercenary attack. Guards patrolled the floating platforms, diplomats arrived from distant star systems, and the citizens whispered about the human who had married their princess. To most, Kieran remained an unremarkable man, quiet, polite, and seemingly inexperienced in their alien world. But Lyra knew better. She had watched him during the attack. The way he assessed every movement, every angle, every risk, it had been precise, almost unnervingly so. He had saved lives without anyone realizing it. The thought stayed with her, lingering like a shadow she could not shake. Lyra decided to observe him more closely. If he truly was just a human diplomat, she wanted to understand him fully. And if he was not, well, she would need to be ready. Next morning, Kieran accompanied Lyra on a tour of the palace's training grounds. Scyphorian warriors moved with elegant precision, their bodies glowing faintly with bioluminescence. They practiced combat routines with fluid grace, using weapons that seemed to hum with energy. Kieran watched quietly, his expression calm. "Are you not intimidated?" Lyra asked, her tone both teasing and curious. Kieran shook his head. Intimidation is wasted energy. Observation is stronger than fear. Every movement tells a story. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "And what story do you see here?" Kieran's gaze followed a young warrior's swing of a blade. Confidence, discipline, but also impatience. That one is too eager to end the fight before the opponent's weaknesses appear. He will falter soon if he does not learn patience. Lyra blinked. "You notice all this, just by watching?" He nodded. Observation is part of survival. The warrior he had pointed out stumbled, slightly during a routine strike. Lyra gasped. "You are right, how could you know?" Kieran smiled faintly. "Patterns reveal themselves if you watch carefully." Lyra frowned. This was no ordinary human. There was a sharpness in his mind, a clarity that most Scyphorians took years to develop. She could not hide her curiosity nor her growing unease. Days passed and Kieran continued to display subtle, almost invisible skills. In the gardens, he moved with unusual agility over uneven terrain. He climbed small platforms that even Lyra found difficult, balancing carefully, yet with a speed that seemed effortless. Guards reported that he had helped defuse minor accidents, stopping equipment from falling or preventing small fires, all without anyone noticing. The palace staff whispered about his abilities, though few could describe them. To outsiders, he was merely helpful. To Lyra, each act hinted at something far greater. One evening, the palace received a message from a distant outpost. A mining colony on Zephora's outer ring had been attacked by alien raiders. The governor requested immediate assistance. Lyra was concerned. The outpost was far isolated and vulnerable. She had expected Kieran to stay behind, safe in the palace. Instead, he asked to accompany her. "You should not risk yourself," she said, surprised. "I am not here to risk myself. I am here to protect you," he replied simply. Lyra studied him, noting the quiet firmness in his voice. He seemed harmless at first glance, yet his determination carried weight. She realized he would not be swayed by caution or fear. The journey to the outpost was long, taking them across glittering fields of floating rocks and shimmering energy streams. Along the way, Kieran demonstrated more subtle abilities. When a violent windstorm swept through a canyon, threatening to push their transport off course, Kieran anticipated the turbulence, adjusting the ship's controls with careful precision. He predicted the shifting currents of energy before the ship's sensors could react. Lyra watched him silently. She had never seen a human act with such foresight. His skill was quiet, unseen, and deadly effective. At the outpost, chaos awaited them. Buildings were damaged, energy barriers were down, and the raiders had left traps behind. The Zephorian guards struggled to maintain order. Lyra felt a twinge of panic, but Kieran remained calm. He moved through the ruins with ease, guiding guards away from danger, dismantling traps before they could activate, and even saving a group of miners trapped under debris. "Why are you so calm?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kieran did not stop. "Calmness is not the absence of fear, it is the control of it. Panic only gives advantage to the enemy." Lyra had to admit, he was right. Every action he took was precise, efficient, and deliberate. The miners were safe, the traps neutralized, and the raiders' ambushes foiled before they could act. At night, after the outpost had been secured, Lyra and Kieran stood on a balcony overlooking the settlement. Fires burned in the distance. The aftermath of the attack, but the people were safe. "You are extraordinary," Lyra said. her voice hesitant. Kieran looked at her calmly. I am human. We survive and adapt, that is all. Lyra shook her head, a mixture of admiration and disbelief. No human I have met could do what you just did. You move like a predator and a protector at the same time, and yet you make it look simple. Kieran smiled faintly. Appearances are always deceiving. Most beings see only what they expect to see. Lyra studied him, realizing the truth in his words. All her assumptions about him, his simplicity, his weakness, had been wrong. Every act of observation, every subtle movement revealed a skill that most Zephorians could not comprehend. Over the next few days, Lyra noticed more anomalies. Kieran anticipated attacks in the palace training exercises, predicted movements in sparring matches, and even disarmed minor accidents before they escalated. No one knew the full extent of his abilities, and Kieran did not brag or show off. He remained quiet, helpful, and polite, blending seamlessly into the palace life while silently demonstrating his strength. Lyra felt a strange mixture of frustration and respect. She had married a man who appeared ordinary, but was quietly extraordinary, and for the first time she realized she had underestimated him completely. One afternoon, during a ceremonial parade, a group of Zyphorian nobles tried to challenge Kieran. They mocked his human appearance and implied he was unworthy of the princess. Kieran smiled politely, bowing slightly. I am honored by your attention. The nobles laughed, thinking him timid. But when a minor mishap occurred, a large decorative platform began to tilt dangerously, Kieran reacted instantly. He moved with speed and precision, steadying the structure before it could fall, saving several nobles in the process. The crowd fell silent. Whispers spread quickly. This human was not ordinary. Even Lyra's advisors began to murmur in amazement. Lyra approached him later, curiosity and awe in her eyes. You do this effortlessly. How? Kieran looked at her calmly. Observation, practice, and understanding of the world around me. Humans survive because we notice what others miss. We act when others hesitate. That is all. Lyra studied him, realizing he was unlike any being she had ever encountered. Quiet, polite, and seemingly ordinary, yet capable of extraordinary skill. Her frustration softened, replaced by something she had not expected: admiration. As they walked through the palace gardens that evening, Lyra realized a truth she could no longer ignore. Kieran was not just her husband. He was a protector, a strategist, and perhaps something even greater. She could sense it in the way he moved, in the way he observed, and in the quiet confidence that radiated from him. He was human. He was simple in appearance. But beneath that simplicity lay a power that few could match, and she would need to understand it fully. The alliance between Earth and Zephora was still fragile. Political tensions simmered beneath the surface, and threats, both known and unknown, loomed in the galaxy. Lyra had thought she had married a simple man. Now she realized she had married a hidden force, a force that could change the course of events in ways she could not yet imagine. And Kieran remained quiet, calm, and waiting. The princess could feel it. The world she knew was about to shift. And when it did, she would need the man she had once thought simple more than she had ever imagined. The days after the outpost incident were tense. News traveled fast across Zephora, and the whispers of Kieran's skill reached far beyond the palace walls. Yet even with the admiration, Lyra could sense the unease in the court. Political rivals and ambitious nobles quietly questioned the alliance with Earth, wary of a human who seemed far stronger and smarter than anyone expected. Lyra and Kieran remained at the palace for only a short while. Soon a message arrived from another colony, farther out in the Zephorian system. The colony's governor reported a series of attacks, well-coordinated strikes that seemed too organized to be random. Ships were destroyed, supply lines severed, and rumors spoke of alien raiders with advanced technology, unknown even to Zyphorian intelligence. This is serious, Lyra said as she read the message. Her fingers traced the holographic lines of the report. The attackers are strategic. They plan carefully. This is not a simple raid. It is war. Kieran looked at her calmly. We should not assume their full capability yet. Let's see what they reveal first. Lyra frowned. You sound confident, yet you have no idea what we face. Kieran smiled faintly. Confidence comes from preparation, not certainty. Despite the unease, Lyra insisted they travel to the colony to assess the situation personally. Kieran agreed, his expression neutral, as if he had anticipated this decision. The journey to the colony took them across a region of space fraught with danger. Meteoroid fields glimmered with stray energy currents, and volatile cosmic storms threatened even the most advanced ships. Kieran remained calm through it all. When their transport rocked violently in a storm, he moved with deliberate precision, adjusting the controls before the ship's automated systems could react. Lyra watched him quietly, noting the difference between human reflex and pure calculation. Most beings in the galaxy relied heavily on their instincts, sometimes acting recklessly in a crisis. Kieran combined instinct with intelligence, a harmony she had never seen before. When they arrived at the colony, the devastation was worse than expected. Buildings were shattered, energy shields burned in jagged patterns, and panic gripped the remaining inhabitants. Guards struggled to maintain order, and civilians fled in every direction. Lyra felt her stomach tighten. She had seen destruction before, but this was organized chaos. Someone had carefully planned every strike to cripple the colony's defenses. Kieran moved through the ruins calmly. He assisted guards in guiding civilians to safety, noted areas where ambushes could occur, and even stopped a malfunctioning energy barrier from collapsing on a group of miners. Every action was deliberate, precise, and effective. Lyra had begun to understand that he did not just survive danger, he controlled it, and not through brute force alone, but through observation, prediction, and timing. Later, in a command room of the colony, Kieran studied the map of the attack routes. The holographic projection showed patterns of movement, energy consumption, and weapon usage. He traced the paths carefully, noting anomalies and weak points in the raiders' tactics. They are not random, he said. They strike where they will cause maximum chaos, but they leave traces. They underestimate observation. Lyra watched him, fascinated. How do you see what they leave behind? We have trained analysts, dozens of experts, and you see patterns. In moments, Kieran shrugged. It is how humans survive. We notice details others ignore, we connect dots. That is all. The calm analysis was suddenly shattered. Sensors detected incoming ships, sleek and fast, far more advanced than anything the colony possessed. The raiders had returned, and this time they were prepared to strike with full force. Lyra's heart raced. Guards scrambled to form a defensive perimeter, but the raiders' technology was superior. Missiles sliced through energy shields, and automated turrets were disabled almost instantly. Panic spread through the colony. Kieran remained calm. He moved through the command center, issuing orders to the guards, predicting the raiders' approach and ensuring civilians were evacuated efficiently. His every decision minimized casualties, yet he remained unflustered. Princess, he said softly, we cannot wait for them to make the first move. We must act before they reach critical areas. Lyra stared at him, her eyes wide. You mean, fight them? Now? Kieran nodded. We have no choice. Waiting will only give them advantage. Trust me. The first wave of raiders landed near the colony's main energy hub. Guards opened fire, but it was clear they were outmatched. Kieran stepped forward, moving with a speed and precision that defied his calm appearance. He directed the defenders, intercepted attackers, and even disarmed traps meant to harm the colony's people. Lyra watched in awe. Every human instinct, every calculated move, every precise action made Kieran appear almost untouchable. He was no ordinary diplomat. He was a force that could tip the scales of battle without anyone fully understanding how. The raiders advanced, their weapons cutting through defenses, But Kieran anticipated every strike. With careful timing, he moved through the battlefield, neutralizing threats, guiding survivors, and turning the tide. Guards began to follow his lead, their morale bolstered by his presence. At one point, a raider nearly reached Lyra's position. Before anyone could react, Kieran appeared beside her, deflecting the attack with a swift movement, almost like he had anticipated it before it happened. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. You saved me," she whispered. He looked at her calmly. "I protect what matters. That is my duty." The battle raged through the night. The raiders tried multiple tactics, each more dangerous than the last. Kieran moved through it all with quiet determination, his blade and hands precise, instruments of defense and strategy. Lyra began to see him not as a human, not as a simple diplomat, but as a warrior, a protector, and a strategist who could read the battlefield as easily as reading a map. By dawn, the raiders had been repelled. Many retreated, some destroyed, and the colony, though damaged, survived. Civilians and guards alike looked at Kieran with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The quiet human they had underestimated had changed the course of the battle. Lyra approached him as he surveyed the aftermath. Dust and debris clung to his clothes, but his posture remained calm and steady. "You are incredible," she said, her voice a mixture of shock and admiration. "I thought you were simple, ordinary. I was wrong." Kieran shook his head slightly. "Appearances can be deceiving, Princess. Most beings judge strength by what they see. Humans, we show it only when needed." Lyra studied him carefully. For the first time, she understood the truth. Kieran was not just her husband. He was a hidden force, a protector, and a genius in ways most could not comprehend. The colonists began to celebrate their survival, and Zephyrian soldiers whispered about the human's skill. Yet Kieran remained humble, quietly helping wherever needed, never boasting, never claiming glory. That night, Lyra and Kieran returned to the palace. She could not sleep, her mind racing with thoughts. She had married a simple man, or so she had believed. Now she understood that he was far more than that. The galaxy was full of threats, of unknown dangers, of enemies who thought themselves superior. And yet, Lyra realized, Kieran could face them all. The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged mountains of Zephyra's outer rim. Its light reflected on the alien rock formations, turning them into towers of gold and crimson. Lyra and Kieran's transport hovered above the canyon where scouts had reported unusual activity. The message was vague. An unknown group had set up a blockade, preventing supply ships from reaching the colony they had just defended. Lyra's hands gripped the railing of the transport's observation deck. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from anticipation. She had learned to trust Kieran's judgment, but every situation pushed the limits of what she understood about him. "Princess," Kieran said, his calm voice cutting through her thoughts. "The blockade is deliberate. Whoever controls this canyon wants to force our hand. They are confident we will hesitate." Lyra frowned. "And you are not hesitant?" He shook his head. "Hesitation is a luxury we cannot afford. We move now or we risk losing the advantage." The transport landed smoothly on a rocky plateau, its engines humming softly. Zyphorian guards formed a perimeter, their energy blades ready. But Lyra noticed the tension in their movements. Even seasoned warriors could feel when danger was more than ordinary. From the canyon entrance, shadows shifted. Strange ships hovered just above the ground, sleek and dark. The figures moving between them were tall, armored, and aggressive in posture. They carried weapons unlike any Zyphorian technology. "Enemies," Lyra said, her voice low. "They are prepared for war." Kieran's eyes scanned the area, calm and precise. "Prepared, yes, but they underestimate us, and they underestimate humans." Lyra turned to him. "What do you mean?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he crouched slightly, observing the enemy movements. His fingers brushed the side of his belt, where a thin, sleek object glimmered in the morning light. She did not recognize it at first. It looked like a simple tool, but there was a strange hum of energy around it. Lyra's pulse quickened. Something about the way Kieran's hand rested on it told her this was no ordinary human weapon. The enemy advanced. They fired energy pulses, but Kieran anticipated each attack. He moved in the shadows, guiding the guards to cover, deflecting attacks with quick, precise motions that left no room for error. Lyra watched, her disbelief growing. And then it happened. A raider broke through the guard line, moving directly toward Lyra. Kieran reacted in an instant. With a fluid motion, he drew the object from his belt. It unfolded into a gleaming blade, its edge shimmering with light. The air seemed to hum as he held it, a perfect extension of his movements. Lyra's eyes widened. That is not human technology," she whispered. Kieran did not respond. He moved like a shadow, faster than any Xiphorian she had ever seen. The raider lunged, but Kieran sidestepped effortlessly and struck with precision. The blade's energy cut through the raider's armor, neutralizing him instantly without a sound. The other raiders hesitated, unsure how to respond. Kieran did not pause. He moved from enemy to enemy, each strike deliberate, precise, and devastating. He fought with the combination of strategy, instinct, and skill that no Xiphorian warrior could match. Lyra could not look away. The man she had thought simple, the diplomat, the quiet husband, was now a force of nature. Every movement was calculated, every strike perfectly timed, every action leaving the enemy confused and afraid. The guards followed his lead, their morale restored by his calm efficiency. Even the most seasoned Xiphorian fighters struggled to keep up with his speed and foresight. At one point, a raider with a heavy weapon charged toward Kieran. He anticipated the trajectory, stepped aside with impossible speed, and disarmed the attacker with a single, precise movement. The enemy fell to the ground, stunned, unable to comprehend how a single human could move with such skill. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and fear. She had married a man who seemed ordinary, yet here he was, turning the tide of battle with nothing but a blade and his mind. The raiders regrouped, forming a new line of attack. Kieran paused briefly, observing their patterns. "They rely on numbers and brute force," he said softly. "They have no strategy beyond aggression." Then, with a speed that made her dizzy, he moved. Kieran struck again and again, his blade slicing through enemy ranks with precision. He anticipated every move, every counterattack, every shift in their formation. The raiders were skilled, but they were no match for him. Lyra's mind raced. She had seen humans survive in dangerous situations. She had known they were clever, but this was something else entirely. Kieran was not merely surviving. He was controlling the battlefield, bending it to his will. The canyon echoed with the sound of combat, but not a single sound came from Kieran. His movements were silent, lethal, and perfect. The raiders' confidence crumbled as they realized they had underestimated the human. At one point, a group of raiders tried to flank him from behind. Kieran anticipated the maneuver, spinning with impossible grace, and neutralized the threat before they could strike. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He had predicted their move before it even began. When the battle was over, the remaining raiders retreated, leaving behind weapons, ships, and a profound sense of disbelief. The colony was safe, the guards were alive, and Kieran had not lost a single step. Lyra approached him, her heart still racing. How did you do that?" she asked. He looked at her calmly, the blade still glowing softly in his hand. "I am human, Princess. We survive because we notice what others miss. We act when others hesitate, and we protect what matters to us." Lyra shook her head, a mixture of awe and disbelief in her eyes. "I thought you were simple, ordinary. I was wrong." Kieran folded the blade and returned it to his belt. Appearances are always deceiving. Lyra studied him, realizing the full truth. The man she had married was no diplomat, no ordinary human. He was a warrior, a protector, and a strategist beyond her understanding. He had waited for the right moment to reveal his full strength, and in doing so, He had changed the course of events in ways she could not have imagined. The colonists and guards began to gather, murmuring in astonishment. The story of the human who had defended the colony spread quickly, and even the Xiphorian nobles could not ignore what they had witnessed. Lyra felt a deep respect for Kieran, mixed with a new understanding. She had underestimated him for the first time in her life, and the lesson had been humbling. As they returned to the transport, the sun fully risen and the canyon bathed in light, Lyra realized something else. This was only the beginning. The Mao galaxy was full of threats of enemies who thought themselves powerful, and yet with Kieran by her side, she knew they could face anything. He had drawn his blade, he had shown his true skill, and the man she had once thought simple was now a force that no one could ignore. Lyra glanced at him, a mixture of admiration and something else she could not name. Respect? Trust? Perhaps both. She realized that in the days ahead she would need to rely on him in ways she had never imagined. The twin suns of Zephora were high in the sky, casting long golden beams over the palace gardens. Lyra walked through the winding paths, her mind still replaying the events at the canyon. The memory of Kieran drawing his blade and moving like a force of nature haunted her thoughts. She had underestimated him. She had almost misjudged the man she had married, and yet she could not help but admire him. The palace was calm now. Guards patrolled quietly, the nobles whispered among themselves, and the citizens had returned to their daily routines. But the ripples of Kieran's actions at the canyon spread further than anyone realized. Even the High Council of Xiphora, usually skeptical of outsiders, had been impressed by his skill, strategy, and calm demeanor under pressure. Lyra found Kieran in the training grounds, watching a group of young cadets practice combat. He was calm, his expression neutral, yet there was a quiet authority in the way he observed. Each movement of the trainees, every misstep, he noted silently, his mind already forming corrections. "You spend a lot of time watching others," Lyra said, stepping beside him. He glanced at her briefly. "Observation is the first step to understanding. Without it, mistakes are inevitable." Lyra frowned. "You see so much. You notice what others do not. It is remarkable." Kieran's gaze returned to the cadets. "It is necessary. Life is unpredictable. Those who survive are those who adapt, who act with clarity and speed when it matters most." Lyra studied him. He was ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in action. Every day he proved that humans were more than their size, their strength, or their form. They were clever, adaptable, and unstoppable when needed. "You saved the colony," Lyra said softly. "You saved lives that others would have lost. And you did it all so quietly." Kieran turned to her. "I do not act for recognition, Princess. I act because it is necessary, that is all." Lyra shook her head. "You are not ordinary. You are extraordinary. And I see now. I see how much I underestimated you." Kieran's expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of something almost like pride. Underestimation is common. Most beings judge by appearances. Humans are often overlooked, and that is to our advantage. Lyra smiled faintly. "Then humans are clever." "Very clever," he nodded. "We survive. That is our greatest skill." Their conversation was interrupted by a message from the High Council. A political dispute had arisen concerning the recent attacks. Some nobles argued that Xiphora had been reckless in allowing humans to take such a prominent role in defense matters. Others quietly praised Kieran's leadership, though no one dared say it aloud. Lyra read the report carefully, then looked at Kieran. "They doubt you. They doubt us." Kieran folded his hands calmly. "Doubt is irrelevant. Actions speak, louder than words. We have protected the colony, the people are safe. That is proof enough." Lyra nodded. She knew he was right. The galaxy might underestimate humans, but Kieran had shown what one human could accomplish against overwhelming odds. The next few days were filled with diplomacy. Lyra and Kieran traveled to the High Council chambers, presenting reports and coordinating aid for the colony. Xiphorian officials watched them closely, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and admiration. Kieran's quiet authority became evident. He spoke calmly, confidently, yet without arrogance. His suggestions were precise, logical, and effective. Even the most skeptical nobles found themselves nodding in agreement. Lyra watched him, a growing respect filling her chest. This was the man she had married, the quiet, unassuming human who had drawn his blade and changed the course of events. And now, she saw the truth more clearly than ever. Humans, though underestimated, could accomplish what others could not. One evening, after a long day of council meetings, Lyra and Kieran walked through the palace gardens. The air was cool, the alien flowers glowing softly in the twilight. Lyra paused, looking at him. "You have changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me, but for the people, for the colony, for Zephora." Kieran shook his head. "I did what was necessary. That is all any of us can do." Lyra smiled, her admiration deepening. "You make it look simple, yet it is not. You are extraordinary. I finally understand that." Kieran glanced at her, his expression calm but sincere. "And you understand humans better than most. That is a strength, Princess." The two of them walked in silence for a moment, the sounds of the palace fading into the background. Lyra realized how much she had learned from him, not just about humans, but about trust, courage, and strength. She had thought she was the protector, the leader. But Kieran had shown her that true strength could be quiet, subtle, and completely unexpected. In the days that followed, Kieran continued to assist the palace. He trained guards, coordinated defenses, and advised Lyra on strategy. His presence alone seemed to elevate the performance of those around him. Even the High Council began to acknowledge his contributions, albeit cautiously. Lyra noticed something else, how the citizens spoke of him quietly, with awe. They respected him not because of his rank, but because of his skill, his courage, and his calm efficiency in times of danger. Humans, it seemed, had a way of earning respect through actions rather than titles. One evening, as the palace quieted, Lyra and Kieran stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns set in the distance, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. "You were right," Lyra said softly. "About humans, about survival, about strength that is not always obvious." Kieran looked at her, calm and steady. "It is not about being obvious, Princess. It is about being prepared, adaptable, and willing to act when necessary." Lyra nodded. "And you act when it matters most. That is why I respect you. That is why I trust you." Kieran's expression softened ever so slightly. "And I am here to protect what matters to me. You, the people, Zephora. That is my duty." Lyra realized in that quiet moment that trust had grown between them. She had married a man she thought simple, but he had revealed himself to be a protector, a warrior, and a genius beyond her understanding. She knew now that she could rely on him completely, not just as a husband, but as a partner, a strategist, and a force that could face any threat. The palace remained calm, the political disputes slowly resolved. The colonies were stabilized, and the whispers of Kieran's skill spread quietly across Zephora and beyond. Humans, underestimated for so long, had shown their true value, not through loud displays but through careful observation, strategy, and decisive action. Lyra walked with Kieran through the gardens once more, feeling a sense of hope she had never felt before. The galaxy was full of unknown threats, but with him by her side, she knew they could face anything. "You are extraordinary," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "And I am beginning to understand what that means. For us, for the people, for the future." Kieran smiled faintly. "Then you understand, Princess, and together we can face whatever comes next." Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of respect, admiration, and trust. The simple human she had married was no longer simple. He was a force of nature, a protector, and a partner who could change the course of events in ways she had never imagined. And, for the first time, she felt completely certain of one thing. They were stronger together than anyone in the galaxy could have expected. The stars above Zyphora twinkled in the night sky, quiet and distant, unaware of the bond forming below. A princess and her human husband, standing side by side, ready to face the future. Lyra looked at Kieran, and in her heart, she knew that the galaxy had underestimated humans, and that they would never make the same mistake again.